Friends, lovers, mortal enemies, welcome to my channel. In this video I will be covering the top films leaving the Criterion Channel September 2021. So, being the very first video that I am doing of this series, I wanted to give a bit of a breakdown of what the plan is. So, I know that this video is a bit late for what I'm planning to do, yet wanted to let you know what it's going to be. The very first week of every month, at the end of the week, probably the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th maybe, I will be posting the top films that I think you should watch before they leave the Criterion Channel. Of course, everybody has different tastes, so I plan on getting a little bit of everything for everybody. I want things that are a little bit more conventional, so that way you could sit down with your family and watch it at home, feel confident that everybody's gonna enjoy this. And I also want to recommend more art housey or production heavy or emotional films that I think are worthwhile for a variety of reasons. There's quite a few this month that I definitely think are worth watching, and so the list is going to be quite long. I'm also going to include a handful that I plan on watching that I don't necessarily recommend, but I do think look interesting. And that is partially because there are so many. In my top 10 list, I have one film that I have not seen, and that is because I've seen a lot about it and it looks incredibly interesting, so I'm sure that it will probably be up there. That said, I will get through the list. Now, first one, we are starting strong. Hedwig and the Angry Inch by John C. Mitchell. Starring John C. Mitchell, by the way. It is quite a film. I would recommend it hands down. It may not be something that your grandma enjoys, but that really depends on your grandma. I think my grandma would like it. I think my mom would like it as well. I recommended it to her. But it definitely might not be for everybody. It is more on the sexually explorative and forward side, but it is also a fantastic rock musical of epic transcendent proportions. It's fantastic. I truly recommend it. It was one of my favorites and is on my top 10 list. Spoilers. Next is the catalog in general of Marlon Riggs. There are several of his films. I don't know if all of them, all of his films are leaving the Criterion Channel this month, but there are a good number of them. Long Train Runnin', Ethnic Notions, Tongues United, I Shall Not Be Moved, Color Adjacent. I would really recommend scrolling through some of these films and picking out the ones that really speak to you. I checked out a couple of them. I plan on watching more. I was immediately moved by Long Train Runnin', which is the story of Oakland Blues. It hooked me immediately. It was fantastic. That is how you start a film. It is documentary style and is just very powerful. Marlon Riggs has a lot of incredibly strong work. He definitely is worth a watch if you have not seen him. Again, I recommend checking out a couple of the films that are leaving this month in his catalog. Again, Long Train Runnin', Ethnic Notions, Tongues United, I Shall Not Be Moved, and Color Adjacent. Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, Roger Ebert. Now, this film is really an amalgam of all the films within that era. The really tropey kind of horror, comedy, slasher films, or the overly ridiculous dramas that really took themselves seriously, but just had so much going on that it was just comedically full of things. This is truly a intelligent homage to those films. And especially the end of it, I truly feel summarizes an era. This Is Not a Film by Jafar Panahi. Now, this was an incredibly interesting film because it was about another director who was in house arrest and awaiting trial for charges of 20 by 20 by 20 by 20, I believe, of no filmmaking for 20 years, no script writing for 20 years, no press for 20 years, and no leaving the country for 20 years. And when he talks about some of his ideas, they are incredibly mild for what he is being charged for. It's not the kind of film that you would think that it is, given some of that preface. It's largely about him sitting down with another director who is shooting the film, trying to discuss how to talk about and explain his film script. I believe the one that got him banned, it's not terribly clear. And what to do next, how to possibly move forward with the trial in a positive way, but as well highlighting some of the revolutionary fireworks and protests that were happening at the time. It's quite an interesting film. I definitely recommend at least checking it out. It really gives a glimpse into a different culture, as well as the struggles of artists in different places in the world. There's some really beautiful moments in the film. 2046, Wong Kar-wai. This was hands down one of my favorite films that I saw this month, period. It's my first Wong Kar-wai film, and I will certainly be moving his other films up in priority after this. It's supposed to be the spiritual sequel to In the Mood for Love, and I'm quite interested in checking that out. It certainly feels similar in tone to the pictures and whatnot that I've seen from In the Mood for Love, but it was a very incredibly edited film. It was very well written. I say that it's incredibly edited because it's so full, but it keeps you interested and it keeps the pace going. It really was intelligently done, and it knows how to handle tension. Wong Kar-wai very quickly is becoming a favorite director of mine. The Long Goodbye by Robert Altman. This and a couple others were interestingly all almost in the exact same style, where it was about a private investigator who witnessed a murder happen and chaos ensues. So that was The Long Goodbye. There was also similar to Night Moves by Arthur Penn and Carter's Way by Ivan Passer. Another film that was really up there, 575 Castro Street by Jenny Olsen. This was a short film. I believe it was around 5-6 minutes long, and it was actually shot on the recreated set of Milk, the Harvey Milk story with Sean Penn, the 2008 film by Spike Jonze, I believe. I believe that it's 2008. I know it's Spike Jonze. 575 Castro Street is heavy. It is short, but it is heavy. It is a recording from Harvey Milk that is to be played in the event of his death. And it is very moving. I highly recommend you spend the very short amount of time that it takes to watch it. Oxhide 1 and 2. This was quite interesting. Oxhide number 1 is definitely a different story from 2, yet it's following the same family. It's shot very documentary style, but Oxhide 1 has a interesting setup where it's like a box inside the picture, so you have everything like super cramped, and you just constantly feel claustrophobic because everything is cropped in like this much. And so when people are moving about, it's usually fixated on just a point where there is going to be action happening eventually, or action occasionally passes through that space, but you never get a feeling of relief, of openness from all of this. And I think it's incredibly powerful. I also feel it's incredibly like Parasite. It very, very much immediately reminded me of the poor family in Parasite. And I feel like it may have been an influence. Bong Joon-ho talks about using frames and frames and about some of the claustrophobic nature that he was wanting to build up for that. I really wouldn't be surprised if Oxhide number 1 was an influence for particularly the family's living style in Parasite. Just by the cinematic style alone, the editing and the slice of life that it's showing, as well as like there's a bit where the family's doing graphic design for their shop and stuff, so that also kind of reminded me of Parasite. The first film I think is definitely worth watching, especially if you are interested in film, if you're interested in film styles and in consistency of shooting styles, stuff like that, and how to shoot within a style. It's an incredibly consistent film, and I really loved how it was shot. Even though it was not a terribly interesting film, there's not really a great drama that's happening. It's fairly boring. It's very interesting to watch. Oxhide 2, I found there to be far less to watch, so genuinely I wouldn't terribly recommend it, but it is kind of what completes the story of Oxhide. It's more in kind of metaphoric sense, where Oxhide 1 is kind of divisive, Oxhide 2 is synergistic. Scarface, 1932. Yeah, by Howard Hawks. Now this film, I was expecting a decent film. I was blown away by how much the original film influenced the remake with Al Pacino. There is a startling amount in the dialogue of various characters, as well as the energies of these different characters. Some people are grafted onto other characters in the remake, but almost everybody is there, and that actually really surprised me. The main character, Tony, seems to have been supplanted onto Al Pacino's best friend, more so. And I thought that that was quite interesting. I really recommend watching the 1932 version if you are a fan of the remake, because you really see both how truly original the remake is and how original it's not. How much it's influenced and how much it's directly pulling from it. Some of the biggest lines or nicknames and stuff like that, I was surprised, or like the interactions between the characters directly pulled from this film. And this film hits almost every beat that the remake does. There's a couple new scenes in the remake, but in general, I was surprised at how full that this film was compared to the remake, because the remake feels like such an epic, like Godfather or something like that. And when I saw the runtime on this, I was like, yeah, it can't possibly be the same kind of story, but it's surprisingly true to form. Back to back. Manhunter now, by Michael Mann. I didn't know that this was the original iteration of Silence of the Lambs. Yeah, it's a bit corny at times, but also really good other times. Oh my god, there is some good editing in this film. Some of the acting's pretty ham-fisted, and Hannibal Lecter is not nearly as creepy as Anthony Hopkins is, because that man could stare you down to the grave, okay? The Hannibal Lecter in Manhunter was not doing it, personally. He's far too silly, happy. Even though he's not really either of those things, he is a little bit. He's just, it's nothing like Anthony Hopkins. Anthony Hopkins is Hannibal Lecter. If anybody was a killer, it would be that man, okay? So, Manhunter, honestly, really, really good. It's definitely worth checking out. You could watch that movie with older family. I wouldn't watch that with the kids, but the sex scenes aren't gratuitous, and there's some very interesting things happening in the film. Especially if they are fans of Silence of the Lambs, I think that they would like this too. The Mark of Zorro. Yes. One of the truly famous making of the Zorro films. It has all the classical tropes that you could possibly want. I would recommend checking it out. It's quite smooth at times. Definitely a gem of the era. Thelma and Louise, Ridley Scott. Ooh, I do plan on talking about this film at a later time, so I really don't want to say too much, but if you have not seen this film, please do watch it. Thelma and Louise is an absolute classic for a reason, and I wish to God Ridley Scott was making films nearly that good these days. Body Double, Brian De Palma. Holy shit. I was blown away at how good this film was. One of my biggest beyond anything else, pet peeves with films is pointless, senseless, nonsensical nudity. I really genuinely hate it. I believe that there needs to be a reason, a meaningful reason why you have something in your film. And when you just throw nudity around like it doesn't mean anything, it degrades its value. And I feel that Brian De Palma has done that in the past. I feel that many directors have done that in the past. Similarly with violence, I don't feel that that's right. I think that you should be saying something with that. Now, what really surprised me when I was watching this film is when the nudity started, I was like, oh great. I don't mind it if it has a purpose, and I don't terribly mind nudity in general. I'm not a prude, but I want there to be value behind it, especially if I'm watching a film for an analytical purpose. So I was really surprised when it turned out to be integral to the plot. I was a good chunk of the way through the film, and I was like, my God, okay, I'm watching. I thought it was gonna be similar to another film leaving from him, Blowout, which is also great. I really love it, in particular what it does with sound design. This is more the acting side of production, touching on some of that, and an actor's nerves, and it's pretty good. I really like it, and I love that De Palma has done these kind of industrial films. But Body Double pays so much homage to different industries. It's probably a film that you should watch without the family, but it is really, really, really good. I genuinely love the movie, and what kind of respect it gave to nude actors, to the use of nudity in films in general, I was quite impressed with it. And it's one of the few films that I feel has legitimate value in its use of nudity. Pink Narcissus, 1971. This was, I'm sure, a highly progressive and noteworthy film of the time. It is described on the Criterion Channel as a queer fantasia, the bulk of the film being bathed in pink. It is a very progressive and explicit erotic gay film. It is certainly a bit much for many, but it may be what you're looking for. Something that is quite a bit softer is a film called The Garden. Pink Narcissus is by James Bidgood, and The Garden is by Derek Johnson. Now, both of these films have dreamlike sequences, very interesting editing and montages, and can be difficult to piece together at times, and other times are a bit more obvious. The Garden also is featuring Tilda Swinton, came out in 1990. That film may have been inspired by Pink Narcissus, but it also feels quite a bit like Jodorowsky's films, and a bit like Color of Pomegranates, some of those films as well. Definitely more abstract in the editing style, feels more like a visual poem. That one is quite worth watching, and again, more palatable, more accessible, while still being in the pretty abstract queer art house. Definitely worth checking out. The Squid and the Whale, Noah Baumbach. Now, I'm not terribly big on this film, partially just because I feel like it's a bit too dry, and I really, really love his film Frances Ha. I feel like that's quite a bit more rugged. I feel like it's more soulful. I feel like it's heavier. I really quite enjoyed some of Noah's later films, and I recommend this film partially for completionists of his catalog. I think that it is important to get a reference on an entire artist's catalog, so I would recommend checking this out if you are interested in some of the other films that Noah Baumbach has made. This film was also produced by Wes Anderson. However, I will say I'm not a terribly big fan of the film. I may go into some of those reasons if people are so inclined. Yet, I'm sure that there are other films which people may be more interested as to why I do not like. Anatomy of a Murder, Otto Preminger. This is actually quite a twisty and intelligent film. It's a very snappy back and forth drama. I believe this film came out in the 50s, maybe late 40s. Incredibly strong dialogue film with very subtle body language and acting. Lots of great moments in this film. I would really recommend checking it out, especially if you're a fan of dialogue, and this is a film that will surprise you, is as old as it is. Films like this and like Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, those are films that I forget are made when they're made, because there's just some potent moments in them. Yeah, Anatomy of a Murder. It also starts pretty quickly, so I would definitely recommend checking it out. Bird with the Crystal Plumage. Now, if you are a fan of Italian giallo films, and if you don't know what that is, then you should check out this film. It is by Dario Argento. It is his first film, and honestly, it is pretty killer. Literally. It is quite a fantastic film. It is a bit dated and of the era, and you can tell some parts are dubbed over a bit. But in general, it's quite snappy. It's quite well edited at times. Again, at times it's a bit hokey, it's a bit ham-fisted, but again, quite a good film. It is a murder mystery. It's, again, very twisty. Definitely worth checking out. Has a lot of great characters in it, a lot of funny moments. Definitely a good one. I was surprised that this was Dario Argento's first giallo film. I think it might not be his first film, but I believe it's his first giallo, which is essentially an Italian slasher flick. The Bedroom Window, Curtis Hanson. Now this is a beautiful homage to Rear Window from Hitchcock. A woman witnesses an attempted murder, doesn't feel comfortable reporting it effectively, and complications arise. Quite a twisty film, honestly. I was very surprised by the ending of it. The score is also pretty good, pretty smooth, jazzy. Definitely really dug it. Same thing with the film with Otto Preminger, Anatomy of a Murder. Quite a good jazzy score. Waltz with Bashir. Now this is one of the films I haven't seen. This is an animated film and it looks ridiculous. I've seen pictures from this film before and it looks absolutely incredible. Paprika by Satoshi Kon. This is one of my all-time favorite films ever. It is insane, okay? Satoshi Kon himself is an absolute master, and it is a travesty that more people do not know him and his works. I myself have only begun to dive into the myriad of anime that he worked on, but I have made sure to watch all of his films. He made a number of short films, as well as a number of feature-length films, many of which have gotten quite a bit of praise in their time, and moments of them still resonate through today. I regularly see people posting pictures from every one of his films, especially from his first film, Perfect Blue, and his final film, Paprika. He cited it as one of his greatest inspirations and said that he had always dreamed of making a Paprika anime film. He also said that he felt like he wasn't cut out to do it initially, but he went on to make it, got to meet the original creator, and really got to live out his life dream doing that. It feels only cathartic and fateful that he died shortly after making the film while working on his next film. With that, I highly recommend you check out Paprika. It is absolutely fantastic and is one of the greatest animated films I have ever seen in my life. In short, what it's about is about dreams literally becoming reality. Now, these are some other films that I have not seen, some of which I am familiar with, but all of which I intend to watch before the month is over. Moonstruck by Norman Jewison. Croupier by Mike Hodges. New Homeland by Barbara Kopel. The Mend by John Magary. Death Dream by Bob Clark. Being There by Hal Ashby I actually have seen before. It's pretty good. I like it. Kind of an idiot savant story. Hal Ashby makes some crazy good films, and I really like his scripts, his directing work, his visuals. Peter Sellers is also in it, does a fantastic job. It's worth checking out. It almost kind of reminds me of like a 90s comedy, like a Steve Martin film or something like that. Definitely much more accessible. Something you could watch with the family. I'm not sure if it's kid-friendly. I think there's a couple moments, but, you know, it's definitely worth checking out. And Persepolis, which is by Majan Satrapi and Vincent Perronod. I probably butchered at least one of those. But Persepolis, I've seen quite a few pictures from, and I didn't even know that it was on the Criterion Channel, but it is a black and white animated film. I believe that it was made in Iran, the Middle East in general. I'm not entirely sure, but I believe it is. Quite an interesting looking film. Like I said, I've seen clips from it, and it has been on my radar for quite some time. Definitely going to be watching it before this month is over. Again, another animated black and white film. Came out 2007, just a year before Paprika did. You can check it out. Looks cool. Anyway, on to my top 10 list. So, if you are like me and you are like, look, guy, I got 5 minutes a day. What am I gonna watch? Number 1, Paprika. Watch Paprika. Just watch it. It's It's just right up there. It's just right up there. Next, Scarface. Scarface was pretty good. Honestly, there are some killer shots in Scarface, some really great lines, some great acting. You should watch Scarface. 2046. It's great. It's a sci-fi love story moving between a book and reality. It's just popping. It's great. It's fantastic. Watch it. Long Train Runnin'. Like I said, that movie had me hooked right from the beginning, and it is heavy. It pulls you into it. It is so good. And it's why I intend on watching the rest of Marlon Riggs' films, genuinely. Body Double. Again, just it's a fantastic film, just with what it's saying, with nudity as well. The overall messages of the film. The closing sequence is fantastic. Like the closing climax, really, really great. Lots of interesting twists in the film without getting too convoluted and corny. I really liked it. I was surprised. Probably gonna pick that up on Blu-ray, no joke. The Garden. Again, if you like abstract films, if you like art house, if you like queer film, I would watch this. It was quite an interesting and poetic film. Definitely one of the standouts on this month. Oxhide 1. It really felt like just fleshing out all of the family's life in Parasite. It felt like just a movie about their life. It was pretty heavy. It was really good. It's very dry, but it's very real. You feel like you know the struggles of this family's life, their day-to-day work. Hedwig and the Angry Inch. It was crazy good and moving and beautifully edited and produced, and the songs in it were great. I loved it. I thought it was really powerful, and I would love another film from them. Yeah, it was great. Waltz with Bashir. Again, I've seen pictures of this. I haven't seen it. I'm putting it on my top 10 partially because it really does look like it's crazy. So I think that you should watch that too. And 575 Castro St. Again, watch this movie. It's only a couple minutes long, and it will probably make you cry. It's a beautiful, powerful film with just words and shots of the shop and your feelings. It's great. Anyway, that wraps it up for this month. I hope that I was able to suggest some fantastic films for you to check out, and look forward to next month's video. See you then.